When we went to the shows, we enjoyed everything. But there was one particular class that I found fascinating, and that was mini gardens. In fact, as soon as I saw them, I said, I can do that. So I did. Since then, I've spent a lot of time encouraging others to make mini gardens of their own. And this talk is simply a continuation of that effort. And by the end, I hope that a number of you will have that same, I can do that feeling. Troughs and miniature gardens, of course, are not new. They are ancient in every sense. Excuse me a second till I just alter that in the corner. Better. This book by Anne Ashbury was all about miniature gardens, although most of them, I confess, look like troughs. Published in 1952 and showed a huge range of gardens and troughs. A typical example is this one. It's not a particularly good photo. It was scanned from the book. It was constructed for the Queen when she was Princess Elizabeth, aged 11. Most of Anne Ashbury's gardens include accessories, of which more later. Our understanding of troughs is much as it's always been. But what about our current understanding of pots for AGS shows? For an AGS show, the pot may be up to 36 centimeters diameter, or if not round, up to 1,000 square centimeters. I prefer terracotta pots, high-fired for frost resistance, but you may choose anything you like, particularly plastic, on the grounds of weight. None are easy to find, very close to the 36 centimeters. So most show pots tend to be a little smaller than that. Troughs, of course, may be any size, though mobility will be a serious factor. Whether pot or trough, drainage is most important. Inert granular material of any kind may be used, even including polystyrene beads, if the weight is critical. Shown is a crushed leaker, a lightweight expanded clay aggregate, which offers the advantage of both holding moisture and efficient drainage. Troughs, of course, may be constructed of a wide variety of materials, including stone, concrete, polystyrene, hypertufa, etc. As Robert Rolfe says in the December 2020 edition of the Alpine Gardener, it doesn't matter to the plants whether these were fashioned a fortnight, a decade, or even centuries ago. While I will show a variety of plants suited to trough and pot culture, it's worth looking at Robert's article for a very comprehensive list of suitable plants. Everyone has their own ideas for compost. My own preference is for 2/3 Johninis, number 2 or 3, and 1/3 grit to guarantee good drainage. For mini gardens and for troughs, each of which will be at least semi-permanent plantings, it's important for the compost to be well drained and initially mildly nutritious. A long-term fertilizer such as bone meal will meet the plant's needs for long enough for them to be established. After that, I don't feed. Choosing a landscape material. There are any number, but for gardens in the shows, tufa tends to be a very popular choice. Tufa is formed when carbonate minerals precipitate out of ambient temperature water. And whilst it's a limestone, it seems to be acceptable to a very wide variety of plants. Tufa often contains remains of fossils, tree branches, leaves, and is more or less porous, ranging from very soft to very hard and from white to brown. While tufa is a well-favored choice, it's increasingly difficult to find and may be quite expensive. Hypertufa, of course, is a composite formed of sand, fine bark and peat, and cement, and can be used to make troughs or simulated rocks, but can sometimes be a little susceptible to frost. Here we see the porosity of tufa. The asperula planted on the left side of the lump here grew right through to the other, where, being in full sun, it flowers earlier. Tufa left in shade can get inundated with moss, but spraying with a bathroom cleaner or a moss killer will clean most of it off. The application of a stiff brush will allow the rock to be cleaned to taste. I prefer tufa lumps broken down into smaller pieces for reassembly as desired. Use a drill and a wedge to split them apart rather than saws, which can leave very unnatural surfaces. Excuse me. Of course, vertical cliffs may need to be sawn, but should then be knocked about to create a natural effect. Very hard tufa often has plenty of pockets and crevices, which may be planted when drilling or splitting proves very difficult. Acquired some years ago on Anglesey, schist not only has a good plant-friendly color, it also exhibits nice texture and nice shapes. I like this a lot. Some pieces have veins of quartz, which further enhance its appeal. Limestone can be found in various colors and is excellent for crevice gardens, if found in lamellar form, that is, especially thin pieces with a bit of shape. And slate is generally, obviously, very flat, very thin, and is an ideal choice for very fine crevice construction. Whatever your fancy, try to choose a material which you feel will give the final appearance that you have in mind. Building a landscape. Whatever you do, don't rush this process. For me, it takes days. Start by filling the pot or trough. It's much easier to remove excess compost than to add more. And start by thinking about the height you have in mind and fill accordingly. Gather rocks together and then apply your imagination to see how it might look when you've got it finished. With tufa, assemble lumps to create the landscape. Take time as you build height and leave enough of a moat to plant the edges and perhaps a flat area for a different effect. Don't rush with the layout. Go back to it tomorrow and tomorrow until you're happy with how you think it will finish. Create lots of crevices. Here, the drabba and the primula on the left, they were from an earlier creation and already established in the lump of tufa, and they're already in bud. Fill the gaps with compost and start to plant. Again, don't be in a hurry to finish. Let the garden evolve as you go. It may take days before you're happy. Vertical walls of tufa are effective, but may take time to develop. Those shrubs can be very effective growing up the wall. If your choice is for a crevice garden, you will certainly need more pieces than this. You could use the same rocks in the form of a mountain range, which naturally increases the height, again leaving enough space for plants around the edge. Fill up between the mountains with your gritty mix to assure height before starting to plant. Try to make it look nicely overgrown and with good contrast between plants and rocks for a natural look. This actually can only be achieved with well-established plants and plenty of them. An exception to the take your time rule. This pot was planted on a Tuesday and went on to win at a show 4 days later, where it was complimented by one of the very well-respected judges as being well established. I didn't say anything. Of course, gardening on this monumental scale may demand assistance, especially for us old codgers whose mountain climbing abilities waned a long time ago. And while in the garden, we may have been well served by our willing and indefatigable little helper, in the mountainous landscape of many gardens, we need to employ more specialist skills. So meet Jürgen, our full-time mini garden assistant. He's skilled, eats very little, and never complains, though he does tend to spend an awful lot of time sunbathing. So, you have a design in mind. Then comes the big question. How many plants will you need? The answer is a lot. It takes plenty. And all, of course, according to your personal preferences. You may start with a collection of seedlings, rooted cuttings, offsets, bought-in plants, plunged in their pots or planted into nursery troughs until needed. Mushroom boxes, I find, work very well for this. A typical mini garden, of course, will need anything from 20 to 30 plants at least. Mushroom boxes are excellent as nursery troughs, being quite deep. It's worthwhile when creating drainage to leave a reservoir at the bottom to help avoid young plants from drying out. Once planted out, it doesn't take long for fresh planted alpines to achieve a good size, so better get on with it. I'll start with a few shrubs. Dwarf shrubs. And here are three which I find particularly attractive. Ulmus parvifolia Hokkaido, the dwarf Chinese elm, sometimes known apparently as lazy man's bonsai. Euonymus japonicus Rakuja variegata from China, lovely colors on the foliage. And Hebe buchanani minor, easy from cuttings and easily trimmed to keep it in character. Flowering shrubs include Kalmiopsis leachiana from the Siskiyou Mountains in southwest Oregon, and any species of Daphne, slow growing but beautifully scented. Excellent in pots or troughs, though they may need replacing if they get too big. We'll look at how later. Slow-growing Daphne modesta from China and Carokia cotoneaster, Little Prince from New Zealand. The Carokia is possibly better suited to troughs due to its size, though it responds well to pruning. And Globularia repens, though normally flat-growing, hence repens, repeated transplanting into and out of the mini garden has resulted in a small tree. Here, one of my very first efforts, an Antipodean pot with Hebe, Clematis, Raulia. While the schist looks good, the gravel might be better chosen. I like contrast in the gravel, but it needs to be smaller to be less obvious. And plants generally. Try to pack plants in when flowering for best effect, which is why you need such a lot. Here are Primula, Sedum, and Sax with a much more sensible gravel choice. Primula Wanda, I really like, it's great. If you lift a plant from the border in full bud, it will go on for weeks. Sedum come in such a variety of colors and forms, many of them self-sowing readily and quite hardy. Naming sedum has never been one of my strong points, but I reckon so long as the plants know what they're called, it doesn't really matter. Bottom right, now cleverly identified by Carolceleta sedum annuum, self-sows gently and generates lots of small plants. Evergreen ground cover and excellent at filling small gaps. Delosperma from South Africa and Silenia caulis from the Northern Hemisphere. The latter best chosen in flower for the best color. Saxes as flowering cushions work well and will grow extremely well in tufa. Great at creating forms, even out of flower. But again, choose the ones you really like in flower for best effect. Saxifraga hybrid Satchmo is one of many which make a nice mini garden or trough plant with a fairly shallow mound, but very floriferous. And Saxa positifolia can be found in UK and European mountains and drapes superbly on steep slopes. It's good in tufa and very reliable. Two excellent self-sowers. The annual Saxifraga cymbalaria with its shiny foliage. It flowers over a long time, especially if it is dead-headed. Erinus alpinus grows very well in tufa, but again, try to select seedlings for best color. And the Edelweiss, Leontopodium alpinum. Question is this a trough or is it a mini garden? We saw this in Switzerland above Zermatt, and it was clearly done to a turn at Woodmark 4. Don't forget primulas. Allioni, native to southern France and Italy, many hardy cultivars, but once again, best chosen when they're in flower. And Primula auricula is one of my all-time favorites, which of course comes from Central Europe. Sempervivum. Semps are brilliant spreaders and gap fillers and thoroughly reliable. Many, many options. Find small rosetted varieties of Sempervivum arachnoideum for best effect in mini gardens, and keep the larger rosette varieties, such as the many different colors, for troughs. And Sempervivum ciliosum var baricii for impact of individual form. Here, a single species trough. This was in a wooden trough in Prague. Sempervivum arachnoideum. And bulbs, often seen as snowmelt flowers, so very good for early growth. Look for dwarf varieties, probably best for troughs. And crocus, very reliable, but again, do choose dwarf varieties. Scilla bifolia, another of my real favorites. I love the way that the buds bunch together and are somehow specially fixed before they open. And Chionodoxa lucili alba muscari spread nicely in the garden without overtaking anything else. Ornithogalum umbellatum. What a wonderful, brilliant white flower. And Polysena. I've called it corymbosa, but I'm never quite sure. And of course, there are many, many small scillas. And Rhoda hypoxis. It survives remarkably well for us in many gardens, but again, choose the dwarf species for best effect. Choose dwarf clump-forming species of Cicerinchium, which don't seed around too much and become a nuisance. Of course, high alpine plants too should feature. Campanulas. Campanula moretiana and braineri are such beautiful things and are a really welcome sight when they flower. They grow well in crevices and in tufa. Good drainage is absolutely essential. Campanula cochlearifolia. The blue on this occasion the photograph was taken in Italy by the roadside. And the white is in our front garden and is gradually creeping between the stones. And wacky-eyed puck, I love this. It also will creep around in the gravel, a well worthwhile candidate for troughs and for mini gardens. This Campanulaceae from the Balkans, we just started with these and are quite hopeful that the Edryanthus will prove reasonably good in troughs and maybe even in the mini garden. Dianthus, lots of small ones. Choose compact forms. And gentians, well worth trying, though may take some time to establish. I've lost count of the number of labels of gentians that we've killed, but it doesn't stop us trying again and again. This lovely and very easy daisy will cascade over the edge of mini gardens and troughs and will flower for ages, coming from the southwest of the USA. And Phycoplex escamosa. Difficult to imagine that you could plonk this in a mini garden or in a trough and get a good result, but in fact it works very well in well-drained ground or in tufa or a tufa crevice. Choose a good form if you can. And Talinum brevifolius or Femaranthus brevifolius. A real picture. This is another one from America, Southwest Colorado. It spreads slowly and it has really pretty colors in both the foliage and the flower. Something a little bit looks exotic, but grows really well. It grows in the European mountains in turf. So you might want to put a little leaf mold in the planting hole for the Pulsatilla venalis. So here we go. We have the pot or trough, we have drainage and compost, we've decided the landscape, but what else do we need? Well, I think we need a toolbox. First, a deep cutter for removing plants with least disturbance. A large spade for use in large holes. A small spade for use where space is limited. A border fork for easily removing plants. Tweezers for removing those bits and pieces in between foliage of other plants and for planting in tufa holes, which we'll have a look at in a moment. Secateurs. You may recognize these as nail clippers, but they're ideal for trimming small shrubs. And a moss scrubber. This is a stiff toothbrush treated to a number 2 haircut, and it's perfect for scrubbing moss from tufa. And finally, a tufa drill, a really old screwdriver bit. So planting in tufa. Held in a carpenter's brace, it's quite simple to gradually drill soft tufa, putting pressure to either drill a blind hole or to go right through. I hope this isn't breaking up too much. We sometimes find on Zoom that videos do, but hopefully we'll catch up. So there we are, we're right through. The plant I'm going to put in is a Campanula raineri. But obviously the hole won't take all the compost. And so we have to knock it out of the pot. And then gently but firmly remove all the compost. Try not to lose any roots. Just simply keep it clean. Whilst we're doing this, we can also, if we turn it round, see a cutting. So we'll remove the cutting, hopefully with a little bit of root, and keep that for a few minutes. Here's our tufa. Here's the plant, and here are the tweezers. The tweezers are used to grip the roots so that they can be pushed deep into the hole. Now, of course, this is a hole that went right through. So we can actually lift the stone, find the roots, and very gently pull them tight to really settle the plant into the hole. And then, of course, the roots are in contact with the compost again. The cutting we saved will go into a blind hole. Using the small spade, we'll add some really gritty compost. Then thoroughly firm it in. I added a little bit of broken tufa on the top before giving it a thorough watering. Planting in the mini garden is a slightly different issue. Here we have a space that might well take a little plant. So first of all, we'll remove one of the pieces of tufa. We'll pull out any weeds or extraneous bits. This is a little bit of the yellow oxalis that lots of people don't like. I quite like seeing it around the mini garden. And then use the deep cutter to cut all the way around the hole. That way you do least damage to the plants that are around. Now with the big spade, we take out enough compost to accommodate the plant we want to put in, which is this cebea. Now, where we had to spend quite a while getting the roots of the campanula free of compost, with the cebea, it's a much simpler process. As soon as you squeeze it, it falls away and leaves the roots quite clean. Now, we try to put the roots as deep as possible into the hole. And with the big spade, we backfill. Pushing the plant tight up to the rock so that the roots will actually be covered by the rock is always a good idea. Top off the backfilling. Use the back end of the deep cutter to ensure that it's firm. And water it. Now we'll put back the piece of tufa that we removed in the first place. And then, using the small spade this time, we'll top it off with an appropriate gravel. And if at the end it looks as though it grew there, then that's a success. But what about when you've a plant that is over, it's done its stuff, like this dianthus? It served its purpose, so we need to remove it. Using the deep cutter, careful not to lose all the sempervivum, cut all the way around it. It does look brutal, but I can assure you that it does less damage than pulling a plant out. We've taken the advantage here as well of cutting round some of the sacs that has overgrown its place a little. Now with the fork, we can lift out the dianthus with a good big root ball. And the saxifraga, look at the roots on this. Take away any bits that aren't really needed and dig out. You can see that the compost is actually fairly dry. So give it a decent watering before we plant. I'm going to start by putting in a piece of this globularia. This is in the garden. And when you lift it out, you can see it's not short of roots. In this case, rather than taking all the soil away, I squeeze the roots together and then push it hard into the place where you want it to be. Hard up against the rock and hard up against the plants that are already there. Now, I found at this point there wasn't enough room for what I really wanted to do. And so what I did was to just ease the rock away to give me a little more space. That's a tiny clematis, which I've pushed to one side. Now, having dug out the hole as before, here's the plant I'm going to put in. Plenty of root and pushed well down. When you look at it, there's still a little bit of space left. But of course, we can always put in a bit of extra tufa. Backfill the hole. Again, nice gritty mix. And then put a piece of tufa in just a bridge across from one plant to another. And finally, you would top this off with a topping of some sort, whatever color you choose. This miserable looking stone on top of the garden has gone through the winter and suffered rather, although it has a few seedlings of the sax Cymboleria. Here I've cut round as before and then dig out, because what I have in mind is to use a plant that's already on the garden. Here it is. It's a piece of tufa with sax oppositifolia growing in it. And I want to replace the old stone with the new. But oops, I'm not enough depth in the hole. So, okay, lift it off and dig further until you're happy. Never be satisfied until you're really happy with what you see. Here we are again. It's still not quite right. As I remember, it took 2 or 3 times before eventually it looked like that. Surely it must have been there all the time. So, mini gardens. A question I'm often asked, do you need a greenhouse? Well, no, you don't. In fact, I much prefer the garden to stay outside in the garden. This is our house. This is the back of the house, facing south, where hardly any protection is needed, except shade, perhaps, in very sunny, dry spells. Birds are a problem. So a bit of 1 centimeter wire mesh bent so as to grip the troughs or pots is very effective. The mesh also allows for a fleece to be attached with paper clips, just in case you need that little bit extra protection. Support the mesh if it's slumping, support it with strips of bent metal or even inverted small pots. What about cold? This is a very old scanned photo of one of my early schist gardens. Mini gardens enhanced by frost look quite attractive and are generally quite hardy. There may be a few unavoidable losses which need to be replaced. When we had a late snow in March 2009, all the pots and troughs were covered. Here's the mini garden under a blanket. Of course, in the wild, plants are protected by a covering of snow from excessive frost and excessive wind, and are relatively dry until snow melt, of course. And then, little by little, the snow recedes. And I can tell you, they reveal a magic. And I still feel the same thrill now as when I saw this for the first time. Incidentally, the drabber that was in the tufa that I mentioned earlier is flowering here on the right. A couple of days later, and it's ready for showing. On the following Saturday, it went to a show. But what about the competition? If you decide to show your mini garden, which I really hope you will, you should see some of the competition you might expect. Two for fun. They show you don't need to make a full-size garden. In fact, the first time it was suggested I do one of these, I thought the idea was a little potty. But judges' humour meant that this 3.5-inch garden was awarded a second place and a certificate as well, a certificate of cultural consolation. Even the judges see the funny side sometimes. The mini garden easy leaflet produced for Chelsea inspired Peter Hood to start a garden. He later asked my advice, and I suggested he might try to increase the height a little. He did. I still don't know whether it was held together with super glue or elastic bands, but wow, it was brilliant the way the pot almost disappeared. Lovely woodland effect by Stanley Prato, with nice combination of plants in full flower. And this one, well, it's all Primula by David Philby in a chunk of hard tufa. And this one by Michael Sullivan, what is it growing in? Who can tell? Ian Instone's crevice creation using hypertufa rocks and a selection of androsarchy has taken a while to reach this stage and will take some time yet to reach its full, handsome maturity. But what about trough gardens? I'll come back to gardens, mini gardens later, but next it is troughs. Troughs can be made of anything. Robert Rolfe puts it quite simply in the December 2020 Alpine Garden. It doesn't matter to the plants whether these were made a fortnight or a decade or a century earlier. Here's just a few of the large collection in Cliff and Sue Booker's superb new garden. Great variety and nice plantings. How about this limestone? I don't know if this is a mini garden or a trough, but effectively I'm going to call it a vertical crevice trough with a cushion plant. It's a well-established hanging gardens with great height in a very shallow container. Harlow Car Gardens display a number of troughs of differing layouts. Here, a nice landscape through the labels are a little intrusive, but of course they're needed for a public display. At home, try a different approach to labels or leave the plants to remember their own names. One trick for discreet labeling is mucky thumb labels. Engrave a flexible label using a Dremel or similar, and when needed to be read, rub over with a mucky thumb. Alternatively, write the label with a fine black marker. Then fold the label and bury it beneath the surface, so as to avoid the weather and the birds. This particular garden trough, no, I don't like it. It's a crude layout and the large labels obscure the plants. It's rather thrown together, I'm afraid. This is better. It's a lovely design. The tree effectively against the wall and the cascade at the front sets it all off perfectly. The size of the trough means labels aren't too intrusive. This is one from Prague. Oh dear, the rocks just simply do not match at all. Best to pass on quickly. This polystyrene vegetable box is Claire's creation. It was treated with a blowtorch to harden the surface and painted with stone paint. Just 12 months on and looking very promising. Of course, we're talking about landscapes in troughs. What about landscaping using troughs? Landscaping with troughs, both pots and troughs, they both lend themselves to creating attractive layouts in the garden, as shown here in the 2004 AGS Silver Gilt stand at Tatton Park. Here you can see lightweight polyurethane foam troughs, ceramic pots, and brick constructions, all combining very well. And here we have just pots, not just pots, but troughs as well. And this is the gold medal display that the AGS produced and was awarded the best exhibit in the National Plant and Plant Heritage marquee at Tatton Park. It was also awarded the Holford Medal, awarded to the best exhibit staged by an amateur or group of amateurs at an RHS show in 2018. Polystyrene troughs and a mini garden, this time on the AGS stand at Tatton Park. Not only did the stand achieve a gold medal, the RHS awarded the 2021 Farrer Trophy to the AGS Northern Group for the best exhibition of plants suitable for the rock garden or alpine house at an RHS show. Congratulations here go primarily to the East Cheshire group of the AGS. Ian and Maggie Young's splendid Scottish trough garden, it shows how the attraction persists in the winter sunshine. Many of those troughs were handmade by Ian using a commercial sand mix mortar. See Ian's bulb log 41 from 2008 to see how he does it. These crevice gardens are particularly wonderful. As an alternative to troughs and pots, try hollow stumps dotted around flower beds. This one again from the 2004 AGS stand at Tatton Park. But now for a bit of fun. As I said earlier, Anne Ashbury troughs have always had accessories. And just a few years ago, the AGS rules were changed to allow a class with accessories also. With luck and a following wind, we'll see more shows including them in their schedules. The genius of Anne Vale inspired the renewed interest in the use of accessories. Though it took a while to get them accepted for AGS shows, I make no apology for showing a number of Anne's creations in the hope it inspires those with an artistic bent to have a go. She's already inspired her kids of the possibilities. You don't like accessories? Surely for show it just needs good plants. But see how the two clematis need the pergola to be seen at their best. Here it seems to me we have a lovely atmosphere created by a combination of superb plants and a beautiful layout. And humour. Excellent plans and a wonderful example of constructional skills. And what if your interest stretches to bonsai? Why not incorporate that into a mini garden, as with this dwarf metasequoia dawn redwood, another really imaginative example from Anne Vale. I don't recall whose garden this is, but it's a nice idea. I reckon 12 months for the plants to fill out and a fresh newspaper, it's going to be very good indeed. And to end, just a few very special examples. First, a couple of troughs. This is another one from Prague and offers great prospects. The trough may look plain, but it is simply fabulous landscaping. I would love to see how this is going right now. And this one by Howard Humphreys, an East Lancs member who sadly is no longer with us. He needed to build special handling tackle to get it in his van for the Glasgow show. That is just spectacular. And finally, a few of my all-time favorite gardens. There is something very elegant about this design by Alan Newton. I wonder if it will look any better when the plants flower. You know, I'm not sure. Either way, it's very striking as foliage or in flower. This amazing woodland garden by Joe Marsden is definitely one of my all-time favorites. With the water running down into the beautiful pool, enhanced by the glazing of the pot, and a great combination of woodland plants. Even with just one flowering plant, it looks so natural. I love it. Introducing the poetry of William Blake, to see a world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower. It just completes a wonderful exhibit. This is Brenda Worsley's effort. She did it to celebrate my birthday, and it was magical, and it tasted great. It's entirely edible. The sugar work included the pot, the rocks, the gravel, and the flowers. I immediately gave it a first and a certificate of merit. We could do more. We could hope to see more of these. What else can you say but wow? A fantastic use of a very ornate large chunk of hard tufa with lots of planting holes and wonderful elevation in a perfectly chosen broken pot. A proper hanging garden. I was very proud to see this on the stand at Chelsea, along with the newly produced Easy Leaflet on mini gardens, which you can now download from your Zoom link email or from the AGS website. Here it is in close-up. It suffered a little by being in shade all of the period of the Chelsea show, but it certainly impressed a lot of people. And finally, my one all-time favorite, when all the plants seem to do their bit at once. I do hope something in the talk has inspired a few "I can do that" reactions. If yes, please just do it. It's real fun. But for now, it's goodbye from me. Oh, and it's goodbye from him too. Bye.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. That was a very inspiring talk. I'm not sure about anyone else, but I already have my bank holiday weekend planned ahead. I need to refresh some of my mini gardens and plant a few more. So yeah, thank you very much indeed. Right, now for questions. I'm sure you will have at least a few questions for John and he will be happy to answer. You can either use the chat option or unmute yourself and just fire away. A few positive feedbacks from Judith Dumont saying delightful, and Dave Mark thanking John for a very interesting and inspiring talk.
You may have to unmute everybody, Raz.
That I cannot do. I can only mute everyone. I cannot unmute anyone. So they have to be themselves. It only works one way, unfortunately.
Superb talk, John. Thank you very much indeed.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Cliff.
I did.
A terrific talk from the mini garden master.
Absolutely.
Very
Long
true.
live gnomes.
One year, when I did the little one, the tiny one, I'm told that the judges, after giving it a certificate of cultural consolation, then spent lunch trying to decide where they could buy a gnome to fit to it.
Right, a few more comments on the chat. People are saying that was a truly wonderful from Nicola. Judy B says fabulous, humorous talk and inspiring information. I would love to do this. Thanks so much. Nicola says I can't wait to make mine now. Lulu says wonderful talk, loved it. Diana Harter, I've lost several alpines this last winter. Is it better to keep the troughs covered to keep the rain off?
No, absolutely not. Let them see everything.
Joe Amy says, as a potter, I'd be interested to know if there's any containers or accessories she could make in terracotta or stoneware.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question, but certainly some pots are made specially for the purpose. The one I use at the moment was given to me as a special exchange for a workshop. So some potters can make them, but I can't direct you at all as to where to go to find them.
EM says thank you. Will endeavor to elevate his mini gardens. Vivian says thank you so much for John for a really inspiring talk. Noel Mays, I would love to be able to get some tufa. Where would you suggest? I heard John's talk once before and went on to make 2 gardens in bonsai dishes, which was fun. Tips of getting tufa would be very useful.
I do agree. I'd love to know where you can get it. The best bet is to ask around. Very often you find people have chunks of tufa that are doing nothing, and you might get them for that. But I really don't know is the answer. So in the end, just go on Google and hope that someone...
I would have a suggestion. I've bought tufa in the last couple of years from large aquatic centers, because the tufa is sometimes used in terrariums or aquariums, and you can buy tufa. Just make sure, because they sell it by weight. If it's stored outdoors, just make sure you buy it after a period of drought. Otherwise, you pay a lot of water, like I discovered.
Good idea.
Janet asks, should they be watered when it is very dark, as now? I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Well, I don't think they mind when you water them. I mentioned in the talk that if you get long dry spells, as we've had, then it's necessary to water many gardens. On the other hand, after winter, at the end of winter, you'll find that mini gardens tend to be at their heaviest. They take in a lot of water and they take a lot of drying out. So just check it out, check the weight. And if it's feeling as though it's gone very light, give it a good thorough watering. But whether it's light or dark, I wouldn't think twice. Just do it when you feel like it.
Diana says, so interesting and empowering to see such brutality. EM says,
I hope it didn't hurt her.
EM comments, it is now illegal to quarry tufa as it is protected limestone pavement habitat, but by second hand. Nick and Tracy, fabulous talk. Thank you. I particularly loved the demonstration of your range of tools. Al Keegan, super talk, inspired to try again. And Janet, dry, not dark. So yeah, she just misspelled. Yes. She was asking about when the
Give it a good watering when necessary.
Can I make a suggestion, Raz and John? If I stopped using tufa a long time ago, it was when it was too expensive, and as you know, Scots don't like spending money unnecessarily, and also environmentally conscious. I for many years now, well, probably 20 years, I've been using broken concrete, particularly the breeze block, not the dense breeze block, but the more open breeze blocks. And you break them up just like tufa, and the plants grow just as well, and so does the moss. So you can use that, and you can get that from demolition sites. It's much more environmentally friendly.
There is something.
You paint the blocks, Ian, to make them look a little better.
No, they weather very quickly, John, and they pick up moss. And we've had people visit the garden, say to us, "Where'd you get all this tufa in your troughs?" They don't know it's concrete.
I think you'd better give a talk.
It's you will see. I think pretty certain that bulb log you mentioned about on the troughs will have some broken concrete. If not, I've done other ones on using the broken concrete. And we don't just use it in troughs. We've used it in raised beds, big plantings, and other areas. So it's a very, very good way to do it.
Frank Hoyle, when we built our last display at Tartan, he brought over a trough a crevice trough where the rocks were all fake. And I think it might have been the same material. It was gray and more or less like bubble chocolate, you know, full of pockets of air. And if he hadn't told me that's fake rock, I wouldn't have guessed. It was so natural looking and covered with moss and the plants going in it. And it was also very lightweight. You could pick it in your hand. I can't just remember or find my note of the name. It was a specific brand he was using.
Was it Supercrete or something like that, Raz?
Yes, the ones he brought you, something Crete, but I just can't remember the exact name. And you can actually find them either, like you said, building yards or even on eBay. When you build something, people are left with a few blocks and they'll sell them cheaply. And not Supercrete, something else. I made a note on my phone, but I can't find it.
Raz?
Yes.
John Richard did an article in the 90-year magazine regarding lawn moss, perlite and cement. Three parts lawn moss, 2 parts perlite, 2 parts cement. It works and it is very, very light. You can drill it, cut it. The only trouble is it is very, very grey. So I'm going to throw some more. I've got a lawn at a hospice I volunteer at, and we've got a lot of lawn moss in there. So when I get some helpers, I'm going to get some lawn moss out, and I've got an old paddling pool, and I'm going to fill it up with concrete, perlite and lawn moss and see if I can make some bigger pieces. But it does work. It's really good.
Right. Thank you, Colin. Thank you very much. A few more comments from the chat. EM again says, I made a trough I'm really proud of using broken bricks plus red gravel from the garden center with autumn color plants. It's pretty fabulous. And then Belinda is suggesting these blocks could be called thermo blocks. That doesn't ring a bell. They had a different, the name Frank gave was a different one. But yeah, just any lightweight building material, I suppose, will do. The ones which you can drill into and then shape, because these rocks that Frank used, he actually shaped them with a chisel, and obviously there weren't any straight edges. It looked really natural. So yes. No more comments on chat. Any other questions? Anyone?
John, out of curiosity, do you have the list that you were reading from of the plants that you used?
No, I ought to have done that.
So I was trying to write them down and I missed half of them.
Oh dear.
If John comes up with a list, I can always add it
Sure.
webpage. If you recall in the email I sent with the link, there's also a link for the webpage with miniature gardens on the AGS website. And if John compiles a list, I can just insert it at the end of the article for anyone to have later.
Okay,
I
thanks.
can do that.
Raz, is Henk here. Do you think you will do this kind of talks next winter, autumn again?
Yes, Hank. We will. I'm in the process of booking other speakers, and the season will start in September and go all the way into next year, into April. 'Cause I don't think people like to stay in front of a screen in summer when you'd rather be in the garden. So it's going to be mainly winter, autumn and spring. So yes, there will be another series.
Yeah, I will miss it this summer, seeing all friends with the same attitude according to miniature alpines or whatever you like. I have still another question. Could it be possible to do this from a live AGS show or Scottish show?
I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean.
To broadcast an AGS show live.
Oh,
the
gosh.
people who are not able to see it live.
Right, right. Oh, I suppose it could be possible. It might be a feast of technology, but it is an idea, and I'll give it some thought as to how to, because obviously it would have to be a Zoom meeting, and have to make sure the bandwidth is large enough at the venue that there's a good internet there for me to broadcast live or anything. Usually I do post to the shows that I go to. I do post lots of pictures on social media, but and sometimes short videos. But to broadcast it live, that could be possibly done. Yeah, I think a bit of require a bit of work and planning as well.
Yeah, and that's why you have whole summer to prepare it for me.
I
Right.
think it's the technical difficulties that are the problem there.
Yeah, it's just
I think the Beech Grove Garden radio television program did some filming at the the Perth show the other week. So that'll be coming on television
In the next week or so.
sometime soon. And I imagine most of these BBC things can also be found on YouTube, even if you can't access the BBC.
Yeah, I was
from
thinking, because Hank, I don't believe he's from the UK, so
no, he's
No,
not.
he's not.
yes, quite. So it is really difficult sometimes to watch television, English television.
Yes.
Unless you use a proxy or a VPN. So
To be honest, I can watch BBC 1 and 2 in Holland.
Oh, well.
Oh, right.
It's on the table.
That's good.
So
That's
I
good.
see before Gardeners World, I see now this year for the first time Beech Grove Garden.
Yeah.
So wait and see, Maggie. If I see something about the show, would be nice.
You will.
Hank,
But, you know,
I think you're not the only one, because on chat there are comments already saying that a broadcast live would be great. Someone else is suggesting record the show and then post it somewhere. And a live presentation at the show would be great, especially for us in the US. I think there aren't any shows there, as far as I'm aware. So, well, I will give it some thought and I will try to do it.
Thank you, guys.
Especially, I might even try it at John's show, because East Lancs is coming up, not this weekend, but the weekend after, and I am planning to attend. So yeah, if watch social media, because then I could probably announce something on social media and see how we can broadcast it. Probably would be either on, I'll see if I can do it on Zoom, if not on Facebook, as a live meeting on Facebook or something or other. Yeah.
Would be great. Thank you.
You can always also run live on YouTube.
It's the only problem is with the bandwidth, I'm afraid, because I've done live videos on my own Instagram account, and when I looked at them, they looked really pixelated, and it didn't look right. And I mean, I know you see something, but with plants, you really want to see the video quality, a good quality. So perhaps Zoom seems to work fairly well, so it might have to be a Zoom.
We had one Richard Green from Scottish Rock, our treasurer, and
yes,
very active member. He did a live Zoom walk around his garden. He did it live, but he used 4G.
Right, and did it work all right? Was the quality all right?
it was pretty good.
It was acceptable when you knew what it was.
Right.
It broke up from times, and there was some intermissions as he walked around. So it was not brilliant, but it was fun.
It was.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for all the suggestions. And thank you, John, again, for a brilliant talk. I've already received emails saying that people want the recording to watch it again, to go through all the process of building their miniature garden. So yeah, it's been very well received. Thank you very much. And everyone have a good evening and see you again in autumn.
Good night.
Thank you, Raz. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks, Raz.
Thanks, Raz. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.
you're very welcome. I enjoyed it too.
Cheers, John. Excellent as always.
Thank you.
Fantastic. That was great, Peter.
Well, there is Diane.
Mhm.
Have a good summer, everybody.
Bye, Henry. Nice to see you.
Take care,
Virtually.
Henry.
Yeah, bye.
Hi.